everyone, and welcome to No Offseason, presented by Mass Mutual. I'm Zena.
I'm Sabreena Merchant.
And I'm Ben Pickman.
Today on the show, it is WNBA tip-off day. In honor of the start of the season, we are coming to you with our 2025 prediction pod. We're going to be talking MVP, champs, and who is making our all and WNBA teams, okay? Plus, we got some fun ones as well, some other awards to give out, and we've got a lot to say about who to watch during opening weekend. But first, like we mentioned last episode, we are going to do a mailbag episode very soon. So make sure you're sending us your questions about the WNBA season that's coming up. Email us at nooffseason@theathletic.com or find us on X or Blue Sky. I've already seen some come through, so appreciate you guys sending those through. We're collecting them and getting ready. Of course, getting our experts on it. We're going to make sure we get all of your questions answered. More details in the show notes. Okay, let's talk about some news that's happening around the WNBA. First up, Connecticut? What's going on with Connecticut? Okay, apparently the Connecticut Sun have sold out their season ticket memberships for the first time in franchise history. Also, right when ownership is exploring a potential sale of the team. Ben, I know you're on this case. What is happening up at Mohegan Sun?
Zena, I like what you did there a little bit with a kind of sold, little wordplay there. And we should say the Connecticut Sun are not have not been sold yet, but earlier this week, Sun president Jen Rosati confirmed to some reporters that the franchise is exploring a potential sale of the team. Now, Rosati said specifically, quote, all options are on the table as it relates to a sale process. And so, in her telling, that could include a majority ownership sale that leads to relocation. That's something like we saw a couple years back when the San Antonio Spurs ownership group sold that franchise to MGM and they moved the team from San Antonio to Las Vegas. In this case, you could have a majority ownership sale that maybe keeps the team in Connecticut, or a sale that involves, say, a minority stake in the franchise. And, we've seen as recently as a couple years ago with the Seattle Storm, they sold about, I want to say 10% of their franchise to fund their new practice facility. So there's a lot of scenarios kind of at play here. And I'll say this, a potential sale of the team comes at a critical time for both the Mohegan Tribal Gaming Authority, which are the Sun's parent company, and the WNBA. The MTGA is dealing with a bit of a debt and refinancing situation that is kind of worth watching from a big picture business standpoint. And the WNBA is obviously in this explosive period of growth. And in late January, it received all these bids for expansion teams. And inevitably, there were more than 10 bidders. Not all those teams or bidders are going to get a team. So interest is really high for people getting in the WNBA. And so the timing of all those bids coming in, coupled with a team potentially like on the market for majority sale, creates a lot of buzz, a lot of questions about what that asking price might be, and a lot of questions of what it all means going forward. The Sun players, for their perspective, they're saying we're just trying to control what we can control and focus on gameplay, which begins for them on Sunday.
Imagine that would be such a steal. Like if you are a team that put in a bid and then you find out a team that just sold out their tickets is available for sale. Yeah, that seems like an easy buy if you're someone on the market looking for a team. Okay, something that's not quite an easy buy, but a hard decision made by two players for the Seattle Storm, Gabby Williams and rookie Dominique Malonga, that everyone has been very excited to see, number 2 pick in this last draft. They've announced that they will not participate in the 2025 Eurobasket tournament, with the French national team choosing to instead focus on their WNBA commitments. Now, both players were part of the French team that reached the gold medal game of the Paris Olympics, and their decision kind of underscores the growing importance of WNBA play over international. And I don't think I ever knew that I was going to say that sentence, Sabreena. This is huge because a lot of folks were expecting players to go back to Europe to fulfill those international duties rather than stay stateside. And now 2 major players, particularly Dominique Malonga, making that decision to stay stateside. How much does that really reflect the evolving dynamics between Euroball and the WNBA?
Yeah, it's not just the two of them. Carla Late for the Golden State Valkyries is also elected to skip Eurobasket again for Team France. We should note that a lot of players have said that they are still planning to go back, including Marine Johannes, Leonie Fibic, and Yara Sablé from the New York Liberty, who play for Germany and France, respectively, among that group. But I do think it is interesting that Gabby Williams in particular, a player who has consistently battled, internally over how to represent France versus how to continue her WNBA career, got a pretty big contract from the Seattle Storm this offseason. And I wonder if part of the incentive was, hey, we kind of need you to be here for the season if we're going to commit to you in this way. Worth noting that the Seattle Storm are starting the season with only 10 healthy players because of Katie Lou Samuelson's ACL injury. So they're already at a bit of a roster deficit compared to other teams that could have as many as 12 players. And if you, lose Malanga and Gabby Williams during the course of the season, that puts them at a real depth disadvantage too. So I think there are a lot of factors that go into it. One of them is, WNBA teams committing more resources and investment towards their franchises, which makes it more attractive for players to want to stay here during the regular season versus leaving for part of it to go to Eurobasket. Part of it is, I think, this isn't the World Cup or the Olympics, right? Like it is a European championship versus a global competition. And we've talked about this with respect to France before too. They require a very long runway before international tournaments. So it's not just your normal, like we go there for 2 weeks to play the tournament. There's a lot of lead time that the French national team needs to get ready, before all of these international tournaments. So I think there's all sorts of things going into it, but it is impressive to me that Gabby Williams, who has been such a stalwart for the French team, who was one couple feet away from making a 3-pointer to send the game into overtime in the gold medal game of the Olympics, is not going to be representing France at this tournament.
The one thing I would add too, Sabreena, is, in terms of Zena's original question about the dynamics between international play and the U.S., is on Thursday, FIBA actually announced that the World Cup in 2030 was moving to November and December. And yeah, 2030 is a long way away, but that's significant because it is a sign from FIBA, the International Basketball Federation, that says, we want to have as much participation of the best players in that event as possible and not conflict schedule-wise with the WNBA season. So the FIBA World Cup in 2026 is set to be played in September, basically right at the end, presumably at the end of the WNBA regular season and start of the postseason. Obviously, we don't know those dates for the W season specifically right now, but that's usually when, that's that time in the calendar. So FIBA's kind of decision to push it back into the fall is a sign that's saying hey, we want the best players in the world, no matter their country, to participate. And we're kind of conceding to the WNBA schedule, which is not something that they have traditionally done for international competitions, whether it's the World Cup, whether it's Eurobasket, whether it's the Olympics.
Yeah, historically, it's been the WNBA that's had to make concessions. They end their season earlier during World Cup years. Like you think about 2022, when Asia Wilson, Chelsea Gray, Connecticut players had to get onto a flight right after the finals ended to go to Australia to compete in the start of the World Cup that year.
There you go. All right. Well, looks like that's a development. And with the CBA coming now, it's not just the leagues that are going to be making some adjustments. I am sure the players are going to be making those adjustments, especially when you look at what's happening in their bank account. Okay, let's keep it moving into the final rosters. Now, of course, it's the WNBA prediction pod, which means that WNBA season is here, which also means that we are now gone through the painful process of waves and cuts. This has been, I think, even more dramatic than it's ever been because, one, there's an extra team. There's more visibility into the fact that there's more younger players getting cut. And I think more players are starting to become more vocal about what's happened. Some of the notable surprising cuts for a lot of folks: Haley Jones out of Atlanta, Cheyenne Sellers, and Caitlin Chen out of Golden State, and then Cheyenne Sellers getting cut from Atlanta. Ari McDonald out of LA, and then Diamond DeShields from Connecticut Sun, who took to TikTok to share her experience of just how difficult it is of being cut and then having to adjust her life from moving all her things to Connecticut and then having to go to Atlanta. Of course, there's an emotional element out of this, but there's also an aspect of just the roster itself. There are still only 12 spots. Yes, there's 13 teams, but there's still only 12 spots. Folks are starting to pick up on the fact that there's more international talent coming in. It's causing a little bit of a in-between period for some folks that are coming out of the NCAA system, making teams through the draft, and then not being kept. So, Sabreena, I'm going to turn to you. What do these high-profile cuts, I mean, these are players that won NCAA championships, that look through training camp to look like they were making impressions on their teams. What does it say about the current state of roster competition and talent depth in the WNBA?
I mean, it's the same conversation we've been having for the last 5-6 years, as long as roster spots are 12 big and a lot of teams can only carry 11 because of salary cap constraints, there just isn't enough room for everybody who succeeded at the NCAA level to play in the WNBA. Even with the extra team, you mentioned Golden State brought in a lot of international talent, so it's not like there was 12 extra spots just for collegiate players, to make WNBA rosters that there weren't a year ago. I think it's worth noting that a lot of players, even if they don't make the WNBA in their first go-round, just being in training camp and putting a good impression forward and making good connections is important. You look at a player like Haley Peters, in the 2014 draft class, who's making it back to Connecticut. You think about Catherine Westbeld, out of Notre Dame from their 2019 title team. She's making her WNBA debut for Phoenix this year. So it's never over. The WNBA process is forever ongoing. But just something to keep in mind, if your favorite players didn't make a roster this year, there's always an opportunity down the line if being in the WNBA is something they want to continue to pursue.
This is definitely something, it's a comment that Satu Sabli made from her TikTok account on a video about waivers and mentioning the fact that, certain players, I won't reference what players she was referring to, but saying at least she got a chance. She got an opportunity, and saying they got waived because they're not good enough yet. But again, the yet is the emphasis. There's still opportunity for these players to get better. Obviously, injuries will happen throughout the year. You think about Monique Billings, that is now on this Golden State Valkyries roster, coming into Dallas, and being able to take an opportunity there from dealing with injuries and then going to Phoenix and now being on a team on her own. There's stories like that all the way throughout the WNBA. So ideally, a lot of these folks that are getting waived will find a way to stay within the WNBA ecosphere. Okay, now let's keep it going and turn our attention to our predictions. And we got to start with the big one, folks. Let's just go right into it. Let's not get our toes dipped in. No. Let's just jump in full splash. MVP. Who's going to win it this year? Ben, I'm starting with you. Who you got?
Yeah, I mean, my pick for MVP is last year's MVP, and that would be A'ja Wilson, who was the unanimous MVP a season ago, won her third MVP last year, and I am saying will be the first player in WNBA history to win a fourth MVP award. And it starts with this. Did people forget about how good A'ja Wilson is because they didn't make the finals and because she didn't play on Unrivaled? Like, I know that, Unrivaled was this amazing showcase where some of the world's best players put on a show and, were present in our lives and we were watching them compete. And A'ja Wilson did not compete in that league. And so I think there's a little bit of just like recency bias is maybe the wrong word, but A'ja Wilson just put up this historic season, like arguably the most dominant season in WNBA history. She set a new single season scoring record. She set single season records for total points. She was the first ever player to cross the 1,000-point mark. She set a single season WNBA record with total rebounds. She was the first player to lead the league in total points, rebounds, and blocks. Like, I remember last fall, Becky Hammon stressed, like, I don't want people to forget how good A'ja Wilson is, and I do think we are kind of doing that heading into the season. So while I expect her to play maybe slightly fewer minutes this year in an effort to keep her fresh rather, for a postseason run, she's still like well positioned to be as good as ever. So A'ja Wilson is my pick for that reason.
Okay, I feel you. I do not think anyone has forgotten the run that A'ja Wilson has had, but I agree in the sense that, it went from A'ja to Brianna. I mean, A'ja. I feel like, I don't know. It might need to switch up. I'm gonna wait though. I'm gonna go to Sabreena real quick and see what she thinks, because we might be on the same page.
Yeah, so my preseason MVP pick is Napheesa Collier, who was second last year, the reigning Defensive Player of the Year. Ended the season on a real high note, other than obviously not winning the title. She led the postseason in points, rebounds, steals, blocks, a lot of big categories, and just seems primed for another really big year, especially after ending 2024 in such heartbreak that usually motivates players to come out even stronger in the next season.
Okay. I agree with you, Sabreena. I'm also on the page of Napheesa Collier. And the main reason, Ben, to go back to your point, this wasn't easy. I absolutely was like between A'ja and Fee. I was thinking the two of them. But the main reason I think Fee is because when you look at the talent around Asia versus the talent around Fee, I feel like Fee will accumulate more minutes, more touches, more opportunities to kind of elevate in terms of production that will put her on that MVP status in comparison to now Asia. You even mentioned it, will play a little bit less minutes, maybe will probably have a little bit less touches with Jackie Young, Chelsea Gray, Jewel Lloyd all around her. So it might even her play out just a little bit, while Nafisa Collier will still have that opportunity to be the superstar of the Lynx. But yeah, okay, we got Asia, Fee, and Fee for MVP. We
I
shall
think
see
voter fatigue is a real thing to consider here. You know, there hasn't been a repeat MVP in the WNBA since, I'm going back real far here. Maybe Cynthia Cooper at the top. Looking through again. Yeah, Asia Wilson has been all even years. No doubles for my
That's correct. It has been since 1997, 1998. So first years of the WNBA for a repeat MVP winner. So that's a good argument, certainly.
So not recency bias, but maybe voter fatigue.
Voter fatigue, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I do think, though, like, to your point, Zena, I mean, look, the core argument, I think, is a good one and maybe a differentiator for some people. But history would say, like, Asia Wilson, pretty strong core last year. Stewie won MVP in 2023, strong core then. Wilson in 22, a strong core. So the, like, playing with other great players, at least in the last couple of years, has not been a disqualifier for people.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay, so well, you just mentioned Stewie. I mean, that's the reigning champ. And she hasn't lost pretty much almost anybody around her. What's to say, you know, why haven't we put her in that conversation? Or even
I'm of the belief that Stewie is no longer the best player on the New York Liberty. I think that's Jonquel Jones. So it's hard for me to give Stewie the MVP when Jonquel Jones was the finals MVP. She was the Commissioner's Cup MVP when they won that title in 2023. So I think when the Liberty do well, it's because Jonquel Jones is being completely dominant on both ends of the floor. And for me, it's hard to sort of separate that, right? Like there's so much that they both do really well, but the fact that like they're at their best when I think JJ is at her best makes it hard for me to put Stewie in the same category as Asia and Nafisa, who are like the real ceiling raisers for their teams.
Now, Ben, you mentioned the fact that Asia didn't play. Of course, Caitlin Clark also did not play in Unrivaled. Fee did play in Unrivaled. Breanna Stewart did play in Unrivaled. Do we wonder, do you guys have any sort of like influence of Unrivaled on what you think players might be able to translate from that into the WNBA? Like, I'm not saying you do, but I'm just curious, like, does that influence you at all? It influences me a little bit because Fee looked laser focused coming out of the WNBA season, going into Unrivaled. And I feel like it's just going to be a trajectory. Like she is just on a path to take over. But again, I didn't see Asia on the floor. And I can imagine if she was out there, she probably would have done the same thing. Does that impact you guys at all?
Yeah, it influenced me a little bit more for like my all WNBA teams and how I'm thinking about how some players look. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. I would say really the influence actually in the MVP conversation coming out of Unrivaled was that Breanna Stewart needed a meniscus surgery. Like a kind of cleanup was the phrase that was used in March after Unrivaled finished. And she's kind of been eased into training camp and is really just getting to be a full go at the end of training camp here. And so I would expect New York to still be a little bit cautious about not wanting to push her. I mean, I was at Liberty practice on Thursday afternoon. I mean, she shot around. She was basically doing a workout with Olaf Lang, one of the assistant coaches, for like 30 minutes after practice ended, just trying to like get up to speed physically and have like one more kind of intense workout in before maybe a lighter day on Friday and a game on Saturday. And so for that reason, like that's why for me, she's not as much in the top two conversation right now. But of course, you know, Sabreena also makes a case for JJ being right there.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on down the line then. Breakout team. Who's going to surprise us all this year? I'll start. I think there's a storm a brewing. Seattle Storm. I think people are sleeping on Seattle. I think, you know, Skylar Diggins.
Too much fun with this,
I know. It's good. It's good, isn't it? It's good. Anyways, no, seriously, Skylar Diggins and Nneka, like they were right there anyways last year. even, I mean, of course they lost Jewel Lloyd, but they're now adding in a Dominique Malonga, and Ezzy Magbagor was just killing it last year at the end of the season. So I really think that trio, I would say a quartet, can be really dangerous this year. And I think they're going to gel even more, and they're going to learn from their mistakes from last year. And they're going to play better than people expect. Sabreena?
I mean, I hesitate to say Seattle was right there when they won 0 playoff games, but I'll allow it. I also do think that Seattle's going to be pretty good this year. I like their offseason additions quite a bit, but my breakout team would be the Chicago Sky. I'm a little worried I'm over-indexing on Chicago. I just, every time somebody asks me who I think is going to surprise, I just get really excited about Courtney Vandersloot being back in Chicago and Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso having a real point guard. But I think, honestly, it's that simple. Like, a real point guard, shooters around them. It's really not that difficult. When you want bigs to do well, you need spacing and you need a good playmaker. And they added that. And even if I'm a little worried about what Chicago may have given up in terms of future assets, I think for this year, their roster makes a lot of sense. Tyler Marsh is, a really highly regarded player development coach coming from that bench in Las Vegas. He knows how to win. They brought in championship veterans like Courtney Vandersloot, like Ariel Atkins. So I like that roster a lot. I like the way it all comes together, and I think that they're going to surprise some people this year too.
Okay, I mean, I'm looking, Chicago does have some pieces. They got a lot of turnover, a lot of new faces out in Chicago. So we'll have to see what that looks like.
Probably for the best, honestly. There was a lot going on there that people did not like last year. So.
That's true. That's very true. That's very true. Okay, Ben, who's your breakout pick?
I mean, one, I just like that Sabreena, she simplifies basketball. She's saying if it's that simple, it's like nothing is ever that simple on the court. But
sometimes things don't have to be that complicated.
You're right about that.
Don't we wish? Don't we wish?
Yeah, I mean, for me, my breakout team, my sleeper team, is the Atlanta Dream, who,
I like that.
were one of the busiest teams in free agency, adding Brittany Griner and Bree Jones. I mean, both Sabreena and I put Ryan Howard on our most intriguing player list when we did that podcast a couple weeks back, and it was because, we'll have to see, what she brings in this all-important year. I mean, I would expect the basketball to be in her hand more than maybe it's ever been. And with Jordan Canada missing some time, at least at the start of the season, we'll see how long she's out for because of that knee injury. Even more is going to be on Howard and Alicia Gray's shoulders. New coach Carl Smesco comes from Florida Gulf Coast. They shot a ton of threes pretty much every year throughout his 2-decade tenure. I'm talking more than 50% of their shots, I think, were three-pointers. And so it's going to be really interesting just to see how he makes it all work. And I was down there at training camp last weekend just to get a little bit of a peek. And certainly there's a lot of high-low action going on between Bree Jones and Brittany Griner that I think is really interesting. BG opened both preseason games with three-pointers. I don't think we've ever seen that before in the regular season. So, Atlanta hasn't had a ton of postseason success over the last decade. And I'm just interested to see kind of what they do. Maybe they position themselves as a top 4 seed after all.
I like Atlanta. Watching their preseason games, you can tell Carl Smesco is there. The threes are going up. Okay, everybody's shooting threes. And I also want to shout out really quickly, Taylor Theory and Tahina Pau making the Atlanta roster incredibly difficult to do, especially because this wasn't a, quote, rebuilding team. This was a legitimate team just trying to add some talent, and they both made it through to the 12-man roster, 12-woman roster. So shout out to them on that. Okay, we'll see how fast Atlanta plays. I just don't know. They got some bigs. I want to see Ryan Howard really take over, but I'm still feeling my storm. All right, let's keep it going over to the biggest question of them all: title winner. Okay, we've been hinting at this. We've been asking these questions in our previews, trying to figure out who's gonna take the crown from the New York Liberty, or will the Liberty just put more bobby pins in and ensure that it's nice and secure? Okay, so Ben, tell me, not only your title pick, but who are they going to win it over?
I'd first like to say, remember, this is what it's all for, people. The goal of the game is to win the championship. So that needs to be said. It will continue to be said. It's why we talk about all the offseason moves. It's all to try and win. With that as the preface, I still have the New York Liberty defeating the Las Vegas Aces in the 2025 WNBA Finals, which we should say is now a best-of-7 series for the first time in league history. And I guess my argument is two things. One, I think Natasha Cloud will have a huge impact on the Liberty, just both in terms of what she brings defensively as an added playmaker, and then energy, just kind of changing up the vibe, keeping things fresh on a team that is looking to run it back. The other reason is that, honestly, when I look at the other 4 contenders at the top of the league, they each still have pretty big questions. Like, the Indiana Fever have 5 returning players, and they have a lot of players who are coming in for the very first time and a new coach, and will it all gel together in year 1 of this kind of new era? I'm not really sure. The Las Vegas Aces, they have a ton of talent on their team, just like last year, but I still think they have a depth question that did them in towards the end of last season, and I don't think they really resolved that over the offseason. The Minnesota Lynx, a certainly reasonable choice. Currently at the start of this season, Kayla McBride is not with the team for personal reasons, and I wonder, did Minnesota kind of catch lightning in a bottle with their team gelling perfectly in this season to come so close? And are they capable of kind of replicating it even with some changes and now expectations suddenly on their shoulder? So those are 3 questions I have about 3 other teams. New York, I guess, I don't think anyone has passed them or solidified themselves to be above them. So for that reason, it had been a long time since teams repeated before the Aces did it just a couple years ago, but I think New York ends up repeating come October.
Okay, and they're beating who?
Oh, the Las
He said
Vegas
the
Aces.
Aces. Yeah.
Oh, the Aces. Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay. Well, then, I like the breakdown. I like the assessment of the other competitors. Sabreena, question is, do you agree? Who do you got in the title game, and who do you have taking it all?
Yeah, I mean, the way Ben phrased it, it's like there's no questions about the Liberty, which seems unreasonable. I mean, this is a team that barely won the title last year, eked it out, in 5 games on their own court. They lost Kayla Thornton during the offseason, but Laney Hamilton will not be playing this season. I think their wing depth is something really that's worse than it was last year. Natasha Cloud is a much different player than Laney Hamilton and Thornton. Leo Fibich, I think, is more of a perimeter defender than an interior defender, the way that, those two could take on post assignments. So, their forward room is a little bit weaker than it was last year, and that concerns me a little bit, just looking ahead to their title defense. That being said, I was much more confident in Minnesota before Kayla McBride did not show up during preseason and is not available to play on opening night. And the good thing is that this is a 44-game season, and presumably she will be ready at some point because she was awesome last season. She was, one of my votes for first team All-WNBA, even though she did not making that team. She looked great during Unrivaled. Courtney Williams looked great. Alana Smith was awesome last season. I think Minnesota wasn't so much lightning in a bottle last year as it was, these players just needed to be in the right system for them, and they're all back in that system. And even though they're not together to start the year, I think the continuity will be a lot easier to develop because of what they went through in 2024. So the Lynx, still my title pick. I think, like I said with Nafisa Collier, that revenge factor is really important. It's very motivating to teams when you've gone through what they did during the 2024 playoffs to be able to come back, with that chip on your shoulder, I think is what we're going to see from Minnesota. And I have them beating Indiana in the finals because it's a cycle. Indiana's got to go through the pain before they can win the next year.
Oh, excuse me. Okay. Beating Indiana, that says something there. Okay. Huh. Well, I will say this. As a person that was sitting in the media room as Cheryl Reeve is going off about that final call in the Minnesota Lynx New York Liberty final that went 5 games and came down to some serious last-minute plays.
Overtime, actually, in Game 5.
Overtime, right, in Game 5, overtime, exactly. But last-second plays as well. And seeing Nafisa Collier and Kayla McBride clearly be upset. And tears, red eye, not tears running down their face, but just clearly having expressed that emotion back in the locker room. That is what's motivating me to say the Lynx are going to take it all. Just, they wanted it, and they were so close. And the revenge factor is one thing, but we deserved it. We were right there, and we feel as if it was stolen from us. I feel like they are going to do everything in their power, especially Nafisa Collier, to ensure that there's not even the window of stealing anything in this upcoming season. And I think that it's going to be the Lynx over the Aces. I feel like the Aces are going to try and find their way back to the finals. Especially, they're going to have some renewed life, right? A little bit of there's stuff going on in the front office that's brand new, but there's got new life in Jewel Lloyd on the floor. I think they've got to redeem themselves a little bit, especially on behalf of A'ja Wilson and the historic run she had last year. They made nothing happen with that. So I feel like they're going to make something happen this year, and it's going to be tight. But I think the Lynx are going to take it over the Aces. Now, I'm looking at the Liberty pick, Ben. Do you have any concepts of like maybe the complacency bug hitting the Liberty at all?
I think Cloud helps with to minimize the complacency. And I think, Rebecca Gardner, another player who's going to play big minutes in the rotation, helps with the complacency too. I think the questions Sabreena raised about wing depth are super fair. But I do think, again, there's enough energy changes and there's some changes on the coaching staff. They're going to play a little bit different offensively. I think there's enough change to provide some new life in this group.
Good news is it's going to be fun whatever happens. But yes, I'm very excited for whatever ends up at the very end of the season. Last year was so much fun covering the finals with you guys and finally getting to see that competition up front. So now 2025, right before the CBAs, all these different teams, it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, let's keep it going. We got to get to the All-WNBA team predictions. All righty. Now, we have a piece up on the site with our consensus picks. Okay, we all individually voted on the first team and the second team. And someone else, not us, came together, put all of our votes together, aggregated them, and created the first team and second team. And I will read them now. First team, A'ja Wilson, Napheesa Collier, Caitlin Clark, Breanna Stewart, and Alyssa Thomas, in that order. Second team, Sabreena Ionescu, Satu Sabali, Jonquel Jones, Kelsey Plum, Arike Ngubawale, in that order. But like I said, this was the consensus. These were the players who had the most votes. We voted separately along with some of our other women's basketball colleagues, and we had some differences. So first and foremost, before we get into our individual picks, Ben, what's your reaction to our consensus? How do we do?
Well, my reaction is it was boring. I mean, our first team, just for reference, obviously 5 great players, but it was the exact same as the 5 players who were the top 5 in MVP voting last year and were first team All-WNBA a season ago.
Are we
Hilarious
So-
that the guy who said that's boring picked the same MVP and the same champion this year.
That's a very fair point, Sabreena. That is a
Right.
very fair point, of which I do not have a comeback, but my All-W team is what we were talking about now, and it looks pretty different. Look, I just think like from one season to the next, especially on an individual player and voting basis, there's usually a little bit of difference. And so when I saw that reaction, especially on the first team, like I had, again, the mixed feelings about who was up there. I mean, I will say, for full transparency, my first team was 4 of those 5 players. It was A'ja Wilson, it was Napheesa Collier, it was Caitlin Clark and Breanna Stewart. my fifth player was Chelsea Gray, who, to your question, Zena, about players who had great unrivaled seasons and now are coming into the WNBA. Like, she looked great at Unrivaled, won the championship at Unrivaled, and I think, has a resurgent first team All-W season this year. My second team was Sabreena Ionescu, Kelsey Plum, who I think is going to have a big year with the Sparks, Alyssa Thomas, new role, new team, Ryan Howard, and Nneka Ogwumike. So a bunch of difference on that second team from what we had. And again, I think like I'm just interested to hear how you guys voted, and we can maybe talk out some of the differences that explain like why we had some names or why I had some names and why you had some names, and why our second consensus team, which we should say includes Chantel Jennings and our editor Shannon Ryan, looks different from our individual teams.
Okay, I like this. We got to talk about. I already see some differences for sure in our first and second team. But Sabreena, I'll let you go next. What were your thoughts on where we ended, and what were some of the ones that were different from yours?
So I just, in terms of voting, when I go All W, I don't like to pick just the 5 best players. I like to pick playable teams. So you think about the team that we have as our consensus first team, and there's 4 power forwards essentially on it.
Hey, Alyssa can play guard.
So
she's gonna need to play guard. We should
that's
say
just not the way I vote. I had 2 guard. I try to think of like multiple positions. Like in terms of voting for these teams, but also like like what Ben said, I had Neko Gumake on my second team. I had Jackie Young on my second team. So those are pretty much my biggest differences. I'm probably the reason that Satu is on the second team because I had her on my first team. But
yeah, okay.
I just think that I like to put together teams where guards get a little bit more love than they tend to do in the All-WNBA voting. I mean, we're 2 years removed from 5 power forwards on the All-WNBA first team, so I like to give some perimeter love every now and then. I know, Zena, you're here for the big girls, but this is my way of balancing.
Listen, I ain't got no problem with the big girls being on the first team. My team was 4 big girls and a guard, Nafisa Collier, Asia Wilson, Caitlin Clark, Brianna Stewart, Jonquel Jones was my first team. My second team was Arike Ngubwale, Alyssa Thomas, Jackie Young, Sabreena Ionescu, and Ryan Howard. So I feel like I had a lot of outliers in comparison to you guys. But I'm wondering, looking at the fact that, Ben, even you said this was quote unquote boring.
Our first team, I should say.
Our first team is boring. Looking at our second team, is there anyone that you're like, you shouldn't be here? Maybe not yet. We haven't seen enough, but of course it's a prediction. So anyone seem overplaced or out of place here?
I think it's interesting that we have 3 members of the Liberty and only 1 ace. I don't think there's that big of a difference between their talent level that we wouldn't have 2 and 2,
Yeah.
And for
I would
instance,
agree with that.
obviously on my team, I had Jackie Young as my second ace. Ben had Chelsea Gray as his second ace. So maybe like that separating of votes is what happened there. But like for both Sabreena Ionescu and Jonquel Jones to make this team is kind of surprising to me because I don't think the Liberty big 3 is like that head and shoulders above the other big 3s in the WNBA. So that kind of stood out to me.
Now I'm wondering, okay, between the Satu Sabali and Kelsey Plum, for example, Ben, you mentioned Alyssa Thomas. You put her on your second team because new face, new team. But Alyssa Thomas is also linking up with Satu Sabali. And so that made me feel like, okay, she's going to do pretty well. She'll be fine. But the reason why I did not put Kelsey Plum in either one of mine, even though I do think she's definitely capable of being All-WNBA, is because I feel like there's going to be some growing pains in terms of her working out with these younger players. And yes, she has Dearica Hamby alongside her, but Dearica Hamby is, I think, an all-role type of player. She's not necessarily a superstar like a Satu in terms of production. So I felt like Kelsey Plum may have been out of place from that regard and showing up in an all-WNBA team level. But what were your thoughts on that, guys?
I mean, I had Plum pretty high because I think, it's the opposite of what you're saying. Like, yes, she is transitioning to a new team, but really so much of the offense is going to run through her, and she's really going to have to play make and both score the basketball and find teammates. And I do think her and Dearica Hamby have proven to have this chemistry, and Hamby's an all-star level player, multi-time all-star, and I expect them to work. And so, I just like the usage that Plum is going to have and the amount that's going to be on her shoulders. And if they want to succeed, she's going to need to play well. That, to me, that's, warrants a All-WNBA second team, at least preseason pick. Thomas to me is really interesting because, she has been one of the 3 or 4 best players in the league for the last, 3 or 4 seasons at least. But so much of that stems from her having the basketball in her hand and having to do so much, having to shoulder that load and shoot those floaters, ironically enough, because she can't raise her shoulders very much. But I digress to say, I just wonder when she goes to Phoenix, what does that role look like? And now there's 2 other legitimate stars who are also going to handle the basketball that, again, the awards case that people made for Thomas is she has to do a ton. And she is still going to have to do a lot with the Phoenix Mercury because of the depth of that roster. But I just, I think she's going to have to do less. And I think then as a result, the case to be made for her to be a first team player is just lessened because, again, her role is just slightly different and probably a little lessened than what it was with Connecticut.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I am fully walking back my Kelsey Plum statement after thinking about I just said Dearica Hamby is more of an all role player. I feel Dearica's rebounding, she's setting screens, she's playing defense, she's doing everything and I felt as if she was like a mom really on the Sparks last year, having to do a little bit of everything. But now I'm thinking no, Kelsey was put, I mean, not Kelsey, De'Erica was putting in the basket as well last year and in Unrivaled. And I can see those two really linking up to do some dirty work in the Sparks. Okay. I'm walking back my Kelsey, but I still feel the way about Alyssa. So I feel like we're on the same page there at least. Now, when we're looking at, these two teams in our consensus, I'm shocked Ryan Howard didn't make it. Because I do feel like she's on like the 4-year jump. Like she's here. She is going to be a big time scorer. She's going to be a focal point in that offense in Atlanta. What was it for you guys that made you go, she's intriguing, but not maybe for our All-WNBA team?
So this is for me because Ben did vote Ryan Howard on this team.
Yes, that's right. For Sabreena,
it has been brought to my attention that I am something of a dream hater. And with Ryan Howard,
what?
Just shoot 40% from the field first, Ryan Howard, before I put you on All-WNBA. That's where I land.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty simple. Okay. I'll do another one. Caitlin Clark's on here, made records last year. There's another sophomore that made records in her rookie season, and that's Angel Reese. Why did Angel Reese not make any of our lists? And I can go first. For me, I'm looking at Camila Cardoso. And I feel like she has been cooking
the biggest of
with
girls.
Sloot. The biggest of girls, but she has been cooking with Vandersloot. And there's going to be an interesting period of growth here for Angel Reese. We saw in Unrivaled her shot profile develop. She's shooting outside a little bit more, not just playing under the basket as much. You also saw her face up a lot more than she was in last year's season. However, there's more faces around too. In terms of distributing the ball. Camila, she lost a portion of the season last year, but as soon as she came in, she was immediately productive for Chicago. So I feel as if it will be not necessarily a battle between the two, but the load will be shared between the two in terms of production, which might dim Angel's individual shine to be able to be an All-WNBA team. But what were your thoughts on why Angel didn't make either way of your teams?
Part of it is just, like I said, I like to go positionally. So if I'm going to have 4 guards on these two teams, I only have room for 6 forwards, and forward is a very deep position in the WNBA.
That's real. That's real.
Angel Reese, however good she was as a rookie, she's not on the level of A'ja Wilson or Nafisa Collier or Brianna Stewart or Jonquel Jones or Alyssa Thomas or even Satu Sabali, in my opinion, yet. So that's not to say that I think she couldn't. I don't think that she could get into this conversation by the end of the year. I absolutely expect her to be in the All-Star discussion yet again, but it's a really, really deep
it's
position.
Hard. Yeah,
really deep
it's
position.
real. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I think it's similar. Like, I think she will again be in that All-Star conversation, if not make, her second consecutive All-Star team. But I do think there is still kind of a tier difference between the Alyssa Thomas, who are getting MVP votes, and the Brianna Stewarts as forwards than Angel Reese right now. And I think Nneka Ogwumike is someone who has just been a staple of all WNBA teams because of just how consistently productive she is. And there's enough questions for me about, again, Angel Reese adjusting to new head coach, new style, new teammates. I'm less high on Chicago in terms of, being a top half of the league, playoff contender, I guess, as Sabreena is. The questions about winning and individual performance kind of dock her, even though I also have some questions about the Phoenix Mercury. But to me, Alyssa Thomas just right now is still a better player. So, she certainly could end up here. It wouldn't be totally shocking. She had a really good unrivaled season, but I do think she is kind of in this next tier. And we should say there's probably a group of 10 players who could really make a case to be in the All-W, I would say, second team conversation. I do think there's a little bit of a jump between the first, 5, 6, 7 players in the league
to be in this year's first team conversation.
Right, exactly. But that second team, there's a lot of cases you can make. Arike Gumbawale is on our consensus team. She didn't make my team. She didn't make your team, Sabreena. I think she's a great player. She might be the best scorer in the league, and we've seen that in the All-Star game. But we'll see what it looks like with Paige Becker's next turn, a new coach. There's enough questions there for me too. So it's going to be really, really competitive. These award races are going to be very tight, especially if the league from 4 through, say, 10 is as competitive as a lot of people think heading into the season.
I think we can leave it right there because what's also competitive? The Athletic Awards. Okay. Now, I promised you all some fun predictions, and we are not going to disappoint. These obviously are not voted on by the WNBA. We made up some awards ourselves, and I'm very curious to hear what you guys are thinking about this. But I'm very curious to hear what all of you out there think about these as well. So the first, the Athletic Award, is no off season, but the Athletic. Most technical fouls. And remember, Diana Taurasi is no longer a player. So this is a wide open competition, folks. However, I do think there are some people that will make this a little bit tough to get into the battle for it. And my person, I'm going to choose Skylar Diggins.
Oh, damn it.
Sabreena, are you on the same page with me?
You know what? I'm going to switch because you
Okay.
went with Skylar. I'm going to add some variety here. I'm going to go with
Okay.
Natasha Cloud, who actually led the league in technicals
Ooh.
last year.
Good one. Good one. I like it. I like it. Ben, where you at? How you rounding this out?
I am going to go with Tiara McCowan of the Dallas Wings.
Oh,
None of us go with
love
Caitlin.
that.
She had a freaking
T-
de-escalation
t-
committee last year.
I mean,
That's
look,
true.
here's my logic: is Tiara McCowan actually tied with Natasha Cloud last year for technical fouls called? She was second, I guess, tied for first among players in 2023. She was actually tied for first among players in 2021. That's enough data for me to go with Tiara McCowan as the technical foul leader by the end of the season. We'll see what happens though. New head coach.
Okay, next up, best social media presence. That's easy. It's Angel Reese.
Well, I was
That's my
thinking
thought.
team-wise. I really like what
Oh.
Seattle has been doing over the course of this training
Okay,
camp.
you're absolutely right. Guys, the committee has to rethink. We're talking team-wise. I was thinking player. Well, it is player. If we were giving out by player, it's Angel Reese.
If it's player, it's Sydney Colson.
On
The
X.
funniest person on social
On
media.
X. Absolutely. On X. You're right. But overall, I'm thinking it's Angel. Now, team-wise, I would say it might be Seattle. Ben, who are you thinking?
Well, I was going to answer this by saying, what is the favorite piece of content or funniest piece of content that I have seen this preseason? And for me, it is also a Tiara McCowan reference, not to bring her up again, but it was when the Dallas Wings did a video when everyone returned to Notre Dame that was like, where were you when Arike Gumbawale hit her historic shots in the NCAA tournament? And of course, Notre Dame was playing Mississippi State. It was a game winner, one of them, over Mississippi State. And so they asked Tiara McCowan the question, and let's just say the loss from a few years back very much still lingers in her mind. She was not having it, and I thought that
7
was a
years,
great
not
video.
long enough to forget
Yeah.
about that.
Hey,
Yeah.
I respect it. True competitor at heart. Okay, last but not least, most surprising / welcome celebrity appearance this season.
To see Timothy Chalamet at a WNBA game. He has such great energy at Knicks games.
Oh,
I feel
I
like
can
if we could
imagine
get
he
him
might do it.
at the Liberty or, Sparks, I'm sure he's in LA quite a bit since
Mhm.
Kylie lives here in LA, but I think he'd just have really good vibe, He's so much
Okay.
fun to watch at Knicks games.
I agree. I love seeing just how locked in he is. He's trying to be on that Spike Lee level, and I love it. Like, we need a next generation of that level of commitment. So it's really cool to see that. I just feel as if we might get Beyonce. I don't know. I just feel like she is on tour. She might finish it out. She might make a random pit stop. It might be Blue Ivy and Rumi, her daughters, that are like, hey, Mom, like, we would love to go see a WNBA team. And of course, with the height that Blue Ivy has on her, it's worth considering. Yeah, I know she's dancing on the tour. She's doing her thing. We are so proud of Blue Ivy. But you just never, ever know. That would be the most welcoming one and the most surprising to me. Ben, what about you?
Honestly, guys, I don't really have a good answer here. I did some thinking. I'm going to throw it back to you. Are there any second place choices that I should have considered or should be considering here?
Next for me, easy, Anne Hathaway.
Good. Okay. Because that was actually going to be the answer,
Yeah.
but it was going to be a cop-out reported answer because I had heard some players say that they're trying to pitch her at the Met Gala.
Oh.
So at least we're on the same page there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think Brianna Stewart and some of the Liberty were trying to sway her to come to a game. So
There you go. Okay.
yeah. I feel better. I feel better now,
buying
Zena.
in. No, you're fine. That's good. We're on the same page. Well, now we got to get on the same screen because we're closing this out with a new segment We keep launching these new segments, and I love it. Every day, it's in a new game, in a new segment. Okay, this is our first ever rendition. It's really not. We've actually done this before. We just never had it presented by anyone. Set your screen, folks. It's officially presented by BetMGM. So what are we watching this weekend? I'll tell you what I'm watching. The Valkyries take on the Sparks for the first ever Valkyries regular season game. Of course, they've played the Sparks before. It was a close game. It was an entertaining game. That is going to be a lot of fun to see how they rematch now that they have their 12-man roster. And of course, seeing Kelsey Plum in action with her youngins around her is always going to be a good time. So very excited for the Valkyries and the Sparks as a result of them coming to Chase Center to make some history. So that's going to be where I'm at. Sabreena, where are you watching? What you watching?
Yeah, so I'm in Dallas for the opening night of Dallas versus Minnesota. You know, two teams I obviously have a very close eye on this year, especially considering all the eggs I have in the Minnesota basket. But in terms of setting my screen, I'm with you. Like Valkyries, first game in franchise history against the Sparks. I'm of the belief that it's going to be a very good California rivalry, so that's the one that I'll definitely be tuning in for.
There you go, girl. You know what's up. You know what's up. Ben, what you watching?
So I will be in Indianapolis this weekend to see the Indiana Fever play the Chicago Sky. So can't set a screen there. Obviously, people will be tuned in for the Aces and Liberty on Saturday afternoon. If I'm going to go with another game that hasn't been said, Seattle Storm at Phoenix Mercury at 10 o'clock Eastern at night on Saturday night. First and foremost, people should not forget about the West Coast. Let's start off the season on a high note watching West Coast basketball. Very important in understanding the league. But also, I'm interested just to see what this new look Mercury looks like. First games without Diana Taurasi, without Brittany Griner, totally new era for the franchise, bringing in Sabali, bringing in Thomas, as we've talked about. And I'm just interested to see what Dominique Malengo looks like with the Seattle Storm in her debut, and what the Storm look like in kind of their first game too, in the post big three of Lloyd, Bird, and Stewart era. This is also a totally new chapter for them, with Jewel having been traded to Seattle. So I think those are two interesting teams to keep an eye out on beginning this weekend.
Boom. Full slate. WNBA is about to kick off. I am so excited. There has just been so much hype around this year and this season, all the new faces in new places, all the old faces in old places. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm happy you guys are going to be on site. I cannot wait to break it all down. This coming Tuesday, we're going to take a close look at the first weekend of WNBA action. I can't wait for the takes. Let's see what updates we have to our predictions. We might have to make some quick updates, absolutely not so-and-so making the first or second team. But don't forget, guys, go send us your questions about this coming season. Of course, no off season at theathletic.com, or find us on social media. And if you haven't yet, you got to hit that follow button, okay? We want you to be a part of the No Offseason family, all right? You got to hit the follow button so you don't miss out, or you're going to miss dinner with the family. Don't do that. Be a part of us. And then also check us out on YouTube. Drop us a comment. Let us know what's up. And, give us a rating. We're working hard over here. Give us a rating. They might, I don't know. Does it sound like I'm begging? Okay, let me stop begging. Just give us a rating. It helps new people find the show, folks. And as always, there's more to read and watch over our partner, the Yahoo Sports Hub. So go check it out, sports.yahoo.com/women-sports. On behalf of The Athletic, I'm Zena. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to No Off Season. To hear more, be sure to like and subscribe. We drop new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.